Welcome to the Chronicles of a Cheating Wife channel. A new story every day. Don't forget to subscribe. Her indifferent gaze. That was the first thing I noticed when I turned my head in the bar, hearing laughter that somehow felt out of place. She was sitting at a small table near the back, a half-empty glass of white wine in her right hand, her left resting idly on the dark wooden surface. The neon lights from the bar's Budweiser sign flickered across her features, making her eyes gleam with a strange, distant coolness. I'd seen that look before, but only in the mirror, on those mornings when I felt everything slipping away. I would never have expected to see it on her face. She looked as if she didn't care who saw. She didn't care about me. Maybe didn't care about anything at all, at least not in that moment. I remember how my breath caught in my throat, just for a second. It was a brief hitch, the kind you get when a piece of ice slides down your back. And in the next moment I saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with all the confidence in the world, strolling right up to her. He flashed that casual grin, the one that promised he owned the room. Even from across the bar's dim interior, I could see the playful light in his eyes, a spark that said he believed he owned her too. Then he bent down and kissed her. Not a peck. Not a tentative greeting. An unapologetic, heated kiss that seemed to fill the space between them and made the flickering neon lights pulse like a cheap movie effect. The kind of kiss a man shares with a woman he knows intimately, physically, and maybe emotionally. It only lasted a few seconds, but to me it felt like a slow-motion eternity. A shock wave rippled through me. Not just anger or jealousy. Something deeper, more primal. It was that searing awareness that I was witnessing something forbidden and irreversible. My wife, Sarah, receiving another man's touch with no hesitation, no flinch of guilt. She just sat there, letting him do it. Her hand came up almost lazily to rest on his forearm, fingers pressing lightly into his skin. She didn't push him away. She didn't stop him. If anything, her lips parted slightly, as if welcoming him in. I tried to swallow. My throat felt constricted. I was leaning on the bar, an untouched whiskey in front of me, though I'd ordered it minutes ago. The place was far from empty, but everything else, the murmuring of patrons, the faint clink of glasses, faded into the background. My focus narrowed down to them. The tall, muscled figure of the man who would become a central piece of my nightmares, and the woman I thought I knew better than anyone. My wife, my partner, my anchor in this messy ocean of life. But that anchor felt like it was sinking me instead, pulling me under a dark wave of betrayal. I remember a bartender passing behind me, asking if I was okay. Maybe I nodded, or mumbled something incoherent. I don't recall. My chest felt tight, and I thought for a wild second that I might do something, march over there, grab him by the collar. Or maybe grab her arm and yank her to her feet, demanding an explanation. But all I did was stand, glued to the spot, powerless in my own skin, like an out-of-body experience, where I could only watch while everything that mattered to me unraveled. She glanced my way, eventually. That's how I know she saw me. Her gaze flickered, brushed over me, and for the shortest moment, a tremor went through her expression. But it wasn't shame or regret. It was something akin to annoyance, as though my presence was an unwelcome intrusion. Then it was replaced by that indifferent glaze in her eyes. It was so cold it chilled me to the bone. I was never the type of man to suffer illusions about marriage being all sunshine and roses. We'd had arguments, silences that stretched for days, and a sense of distance creeping in over the past year. But I believed we were strong enough to weather the storms. I prided myself on providing for her, for us, on being a decent husband, even if my job sometimes left me drained. I'd known we were in a rough patch, but this, adultery so blatant that she wouldn't even hide it from me. A bitterness rose in my stomach, so sharp it felt like acid. My pride demanded I walk over there, but something else in me, maybe fear or some warped sense of self-control, held me back. I picked up my whiskey, drained half of it in one swallow, and forced a tight grin onto my face like an idiot. The corners of my mouth felt stiff, but I remember pressing that grin on as if it were a mask. That night, I discovered a new truth about myself, that I could remain outwardly calm while my insides shattered. That was the beginning, or maybe it was the end. Either way, it was the moment everything changed. A week later, we were in the kitchen. The late afternoon sun slanted through the window, illuminating dust motes in the air. She told me, in a quiet, unassuming voice, that the kiss didn't mean anything. She wouldn't meet my eyes, though. She focused on the countertop, brushing away imaginary crumbs. "Oliver," she said, using my name in that gentle tone. He was just someone from my past. We bumped into each other. There was a spark, but it's nothing to worry about. I'm telling you the truth. I was just confused. Confused, I echoed, my voice sounding hollow. I saw you too. That wasn't confusion. That was. I paused, struggling to describe the intensity of it. It was personal. It was intimate. She set her jaw, then gave me a weary look. "I swear, it's nothing. I'm sorry you had to see that." I remember letting out a derisive laugh, disbelief warring with heartbreak. "You're sorry I saw it. Not sorry it happened." That stung her. She flinched, blinking rapidly as if holding back tears. But I wasn't in the mood for illusions of regret. Something in me twisted. I should have let my anger explode, demanded an explanation that made sense. Yet I just stood there, rigid, fighting the trembling in my hands. Eventually, she inhaled shakily and said, "I want us to start over. To rebuild trust." She looked at me, her expression somber, almost pained, but not quite remorseful. "We can do therapy. Read books on how to fix what's broken. I'll do anything." I recall the strangled feeling in my throat. I wanted to believe her, despite what I'd seen, despite the hollowness in her eyes. I was desperate to cling to the idea of marriage as something worth saving. I said I understood. I said we could try. But I also said I needed space. That maybe I'd find a group or a course, something to help me process the idea of being alone. Because deep down, I felt our marriage was already on life support. She looked a little startled, but she nodded, wiping at her eyes. We didn't talk about it any further. Our words hung in the air, unspoken regrets and half-promises swirling around. She offered to make dinner, but I declined, grabbed my keys and left. I needed air, and more than that, I needed silence. The image of her pressed against that man haunted me, a memory I couldn't banish, no matter how many times I tried to reframe it. At night, I'd lie awake, remembering her parted lips, her fingers curling against his arm. It was a torment that ate at my sanity. We'd been married for nearly 7 years. I used to think that gave us a certain solidity, a foundation strong enough to endure any quake. But now I was forced to see the hairline fractures that had been forming for a while. We met in my late 20s, her mid-20s. I was a junior sales rep back then, ambitious, but a little naive. She was studying communications, dabbling in design, full of bright ideas and laughter. I was smitten from the moment we first spoke. I remember our old apartment in Portland, tiny, cramped, but bursting with warmth. We'd sit on the ragged couch, knees touching, dreaming about the future. Kids, a cozy house, maybe a dog. Weekends spent traveling. Those memories are precious to me. They're like photographs tinted with nostalgia. And I still can't reconcile the woman in those memories with the one I saw in the bar, kissing another man like the world was theirs to command. Over that next week, she hovered around me as though I might vanish if she let me out of her sight. At night, we shared the same bed, but it felt like a gaping canyon lay between us. I would lie rigid, turned away, eyes open to the darkness. Sometimes her hand would sneak onto my shoulder or rest lightly on my waist. I'd pretend to be asleep, even as my skin bristled with confusion. My heart wanted comfort. My mind spat out images of betrayal. I'd get up early, leave for work before she stirred, bury myself in tasks, try to pretend everything was normal. My colleagues noticed I was quieter. One of them, a woman I'd known for years, asked if everything was okay at home. I lied. Told her I was just overworked. That lie left a foul aftertaste in my mouth. In the evenings, I claimed I had a new hobby or course, something about finding independence or personal growth. She questioned me, but not too deeply. Maybe she sensed I needed a long leash, or maybe she welcomed the chance to have the house to herself. I never asked. Truthfully, I'd just drive aimlessly or sit in my car in some parking lot, replaying that bar scene in my head until I thought I'd go mad. About a week and a half after that confrontation in the kitchen, I decided to come home early on a Friday. I wanted to gauge where we really stood, maybe suggest an honest conversation. Part of me hoped I'd find her cooking dinner or curled up on the couch with a magazine, ready to talk. A naive, desperate hope, but hope nonetheless. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and immediately heard an unexpected noise. Water running. Something about the ambience felt off. I moved through the foyer quietly, the muscles in my neck and shoulders tightening, as if bracing for impact. I was halfway to the living room when the bathroom door swung open, and out he came. The same man from the bar. The tall, athletic figure with that self-assured stance. This time, he was clad in only a white towel around his waist, droplets of water sliding down his chest. He froze when he saw me. Then, almost casually, he said, "Oh, you're already here. Already here." Like it was his place, his territory. My fury spiked, adrenaline surging. I stared at him, at those smug eyes, and the water beating on his skin. And for a moment, I couldn't speak. I heard blood pounding in my ears, my fists curling at my sides. My mouth was dry, and every nerve screamed at me to do something. Anything. Throw a punch, tear him apart. But I remained silent, breath ragged. He read my expression. He didn't smirk. He wasn't that oblivious. I could see something flash in his gaze. Maybe caution, maybe triumph. Before either of us could speak, Sarah appeared behind him, wearing a robe, hair damp, eyes wide with alarm. "Oliver," she gasped. "It's not." "Stop," I said, my voice low, shaky with barely contained anger. "Don't bother explaining." I was trembling. I felt it in my legs, my hands. Slowly, I turned away and walked to the bedroom, ignoring the frantic footsteps behind me. In a haze, I started pulling clothes out of drawers, stuffing them into a duffel bag without rhyme or reason. My vision blurred, tears threatening, but I blinked them back furiously. She tried to grab my arm, voice cracking as she pleaded, "Wait, please, just wait. Let's talk. I promise you, there's nothing serious." He was just showering after the gym. "Shut up," I snapped, slamming the dresser drawer so hard the wood splintered. My voice startled me. I'd never spoken to her like that. She stumbled backward, tears brimming in her eyes. Outside in the hall, he hovered, probably deciding how wise it was to involve himself. "Don't leave," she begged, tone desperate. "This is your home. You don't have to." I hoisted my bag onto my shoulder, turned to face her. I saw real panic there, real sorrow, but also a flicker of something else. Guilt, fear, perhaps, but it was too little, too late. The ring on her finger was still in place, glinting under the ceiling light, a bitter mockery of the vows we'd shared. "You won," I said, though I wasn't even sure what I meant by that. "You're free." She tried to speak, but I moved past her, ignoring the sting in my eyes. He was in the hallway, watching with tense shoulders. I caught his eye and almost lost control, wanting to smash his face for good measure. But I didn't. I walked out the front door, ignoring her sobs, ignoring everything except the hollow pounding in my chest. Outside, I stopped at the threshold, letting the cool air wash over me. I set down the bag, rubbed the tears from my cheeks with trembling fingers. "Last time," I murmured under my breath, not entirely sure what I was referring to. Last time letting her see me cry. Last time believing I had a real marriage. I couldn't say. But from that moment, something in me shifted. The tears dried up like a well-gone bone dry. I ended up at a cheap motel just off the freeway that night. The room was stale, the bed too soft, the overhead light flickering ominously. I dropped my duffel on the floor and sank onto the mattress, burying my face in my hands. My mind whirled with images I couldn't escape. The bar, the kiss, the towel, her parted lips. I wanted to scream, to tear the place apart. But I stayed motionless, forced to absorb the cruel reality. My marriage was done. Our life together, everything we'd built, was in ruins. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay there, staring at the stained ceiling, thinking of the ways we used to laugh about silly things, inside jokes, random memories from road trips, the nights we'd fall asleep tangled in each other's arms. I thought about how she used to whisper my name in the dark, her voice soft and full of promise, and I felt something crack inside me. I realized just how badly she had destroyed me, and also how that destruction might forge a new version of me, one who would never let himself be so vulnerable again. At around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Text messages, probably from her. I let it ring, ignoring the vibrations. Half an hour later, I gave in and opened the messages. They were mostly from her, interspersed with a few from my mother, who'd apparently been alerted that I was acting strange. Sarah's messages varied from desperate pleas. Please come home. I'm sorry. Let's talk. To cold, clipped demands. At least let me know you're safe. And finally, a message that read, we can fix this. We can. Please, Oliver. I turned off my phone. The hollow ache in my chest flared again. I thought about going back. Then I pictured that man in the towel, that casual, "Oh, you're here already." My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. No, going back was not an option. The next morning, I found myself behind the wheel, driving aimlessly along the gray, rain-slicked streets. I ended up at a diner we used to frequent. The place was nearly empty, just a couple of older folks sipping coffee at a corner booth. I slid into a seat near the window, ordered black coffee, and tried to gather my racing thoughts. As I stared out at the drizzle streaking the glass, I recalled our early days again. The quiet excitement, the sense that we had all the time in the world to build a future. I'd been so sure of her, sure of us. Maybe that was my mistake, believing love alone was enough, that once married, we were guaranteed loyalty. In that booth, sipping bitter coffee, I realized that illusions had made me a fool. She needed something more. She found it in him. The knowledge stung like an open wound. My reflection in the window looked haunted, older. I thought I saw lines at the corners of my eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. The coffee went cold. I paid my bill and left, feeling a dangerous edge creeping into my psyche. A sense that I was done being the victim, done with illusions. If she wanted freedom, I'd give it to her. But it wouldn't be gentle or pretty. I spent the next few days at the motel, ignoring calls from friends and family. I only contacted a lawyer. That was the step I never believed I'd take, planning a divorce. We arranged a consultation. The lawyer was a cool, professional woman who asked me direct questions about our assets, any children, none yet, and what grounds I intended to cite. The fact that I had no photographic evidence or explicit admission of adultery complicated matters, but she said we could proceed with a straightforward, irreconcilable differences filing. She also advised me to talk to my wife. Communication is crucial, she said. Divorce can be messy or quick, and it's up to both of you which route it takes. Her voice was calm, but I heard the subtext. If you want to punish her, you can drag it out. If you want closure, you can go for something simpler. She didn't push me either way. I left her office feeling equal parts rage and sadness. I'd never wanted to end up in a scenario where a stranger in a suit would be sorting through the wreckage of my life, deciding who gets what. But that was the path she put us on. Or maybe I was the one placing that final nail in the coffin. I couldn't tell anymore. All I knew was that I refused to be that knave husband again. One night, unable to sleep, I stood outside the motel, looking at the orange glow of the streetlights. Rain dripped from the edge of the roof, spattering into puddles at my feet. My mind wandered back to the first real fight we ever had. It was about something trivial. Her wanting to spend money on new furniture when we couldn't really afford it, me insisting on waiting until we saved more. She'd accused me of stifling her creativity. I'd accused her of being reckless. We ended up not speaking for 2 days, until I finally caved and apologized. She had apologized, too, hugging me and insisting we both learn to compromise. We used to handle conflicts, find solutions, so why did this time feel so damned final? I closed my eyes, listening to the rain. Maybe because betrayal is not a difference of opinion or a matter of preference. It's a severance of trust. A wound that can't be healed with a simple hug and a sorry. The memory of her leaning into that kiss still burned. My nails bit into my palms as I clenched my fists. Some part of me wanted closure, or maybe I wanted to twist the knife a little deeper. So I texted her, told her I'd come by the house in the evening to talk and grab some more belongings. Her response was almost instantaneous. Yes, I'll be waiting. In the hours leading up to that meeting, I felt a storm of conflicting emotions. I told myself to keep it together, to remain in control, to not let her see how deeply her betrayal cut me. I repeated silent mantras. Stay calm. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you break. I arrived at her house around 7. The sky was a deep velvet gray, the street lamp in front flickering. She opened the door before I could knock. Her face was pale, hair pulled back into a loose ponytail, dark circles under her eyes. She looked thinner than before, as though guilt had eaten away at her. Oliver, she whispered, stepping back to let me in. Thank you for coming. I didn't respond, just brushed past her into the living room. My gaze fell on the furniture, the pictures on the walls. It all felt like an exhibit in a museum of our ruined marriage. I dropped my keys on the coffee table and turned to face her. She stood near the sofa, wringing her hands. Where is he? I asked bluntly, not mincing words. She swallowed. He's not here. I told him not to come around anymore. Yeah. I gave a short, humorless laugh. Did you mention that to him while he was stepping out of your shower? She winced. That wasn't planned. He just stopped by. One thing led to another. I cut her off with a harsh shake of my head. Don't. Just don't. I'm not here for excuses. Let's talk about how we separate our lives. The rest is garbage. Her eyes glistened with tears. Separate. Oliver, I want to fix this. I snorted. Fix it? You're a little late. She took a step toward me. Anguish etched into her features. I love you. I truly do. I was just bored, lonely, feeling like you weren't around. I know that sounds awful, but everything spiraled. I never wanted it to go this far. Tears spilled onto her cheeks. I'm so sorry. Her words stung, but they also fed my anger. Bored, I echoed, tasting the bitterness. Because I was working. Because I was building a life for us. You needed a little excitement, so you found him. She stammered. It's not that simple. I slammed my hand on the back of the sofa, startling her. Stop lying. You like the rush, the attention. He's this big, confident guy. He made you feel something you don't get from me anymore. Is that it? She started to respond, but her voice broke. Tears flooded her eyes. I watched her crumble, a part of me relishing it, another part wanting to scoop her into my arms and erase it all. But I stayed rooted in place, fists clenched. After several seconds, she whispered, I regret it. I'll do anything to make it right. I let out a slow, ragged breath. It can't be made right, Sarah. You crossed a line. You didn't just trip over it. You ran past it and kept going. My voice began to shake, so I forced it into a quieter tone. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'm filing. I'd like your cooperation. Let's do it clean." She stared at me, heartbreak evident. Divorce. The word sounded foreign in her mouth. "Please, Oliver, no. We can still." I don't see a way back. My gaze landed on the mantel, where a framed photo of our wedding day sat. I strode over, picked it up. Two younger, happier people beamed at me from beneath a flower-laden arch. I could almost feel the warm breeze from that June afternoon. I set the photo face down on the mantel, the thud echoing in the silent room. She stood there, hands clasped together, tears streaming down her cheeks. I never meant. I turned away, stepping toward the doorway. I know. That's the problem. With that, I headed to the bedroom to gather the rest of my clothes. She didn't follow me this time. The clean divorce I requested wasn't exactly smooth. Emotions ran high, and though she claimed to want to fix things, she also resisted signing certain papers. She insisted we go to marriage counseling. I refused. My trust in her was shattered beyond repair. Friends and family, upon hearing the basics, tried to mediate, to get me to at least sit down in a session. I stood my ground. When I wasn't dealing with legal documents, I was coping with my own sense of failure. How had I let my marriage decay like this? Should I have seen the signs sooner? My mind rehashed every argument, every moment of coldness from her that I'd ignored or brushed off as stress. Regret loomed over me, but so did an undercurrent of anger. She was the one who decided to invite another man into our life. She was the one who stepped outside the vows we made. Even if I'd been distant, even if I hadn't been the perfect husband, she'd had choices, counseling, communication, even a trial separation. But she chose betrayal. Meanwhile, that lover, Leon, I learned his name, lingered at the edges of my awareness. I heard from mutual acquaintances that he owned a fitness center in town, that he was a real go-getter, the type who charmed people without effort. Someone mentioned seeing them together in a grocery store. My jaw tightened at that. She might still be clinging to the illusion that it meant nothing, but they were apparently comfortable enough to run errands as a pair. One evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "You don't deserve her," it said. Then, "Move on." I stared at it, chest tightening. Could it be him? Or some misguided friend of hers? I didn't bother replying. I just felt a surge of contempt, telling me to move on, as if I was the obstacle, as if my pain was an inconvenience. Memories, ironically, became both a comfort and a torment. I'd catch myself recalling the early years, our lazy Sundays, our spontaneous road trips. And each time, a wave of sorrow or fury threatened to drown me. I coped by focusing on the future, though it was bleak. My lawyer told me we were making progress, that if both parties cooperated, the divorce could be final within a few months. I nodded robotically. Part of me still couldn't believe it. Yet, oddly, I felt a kind of dark transformation happening inside. I threw myself into my work with ruthless determination. I started attending the gym, not to meet new people or distract myself with socializing, but to push my body to its limits. I'd run on the treadmill until my lungs burned, lift weights until my arms trembled. The physical strain gave me a sense of control, an outlet for the aggression coiled inside my gut. When I felt like snapping, I just ran another mile, did another set of push-ups. People at the gym who recognized me from years ago would comment that I looked more focused, almost possessed. I'd force a tight smile. Keep going. I could almost see the man I was before slipping away, replaced by someone leaner, harder, maybe a bit colder. A small, grim part of me welcomed that change. She destroyed me, I told myself. But I survived. And in surviving, I was forging the new steel spine. At some point, rumors must have reached her that I was living in a motel, gradually turning into a loner. She texted me one evening, asking for a final talk, one more attempt at closure. I was torn. Did I want to see her again? The memory of her tearful face still haunted me. But the part of me that needed finality decided yes, I'd meet her. I agreed to a coffee shop near the old neighborhood. We met late, almost at closing time. She sat at a corner table, nursing a latte, eyes flickering anxiously. When she saw me, she tried a small smile, then gave up halfway. I sat down across from her, not bothering to remove my jacket. She exhaled. "Thank you for coming." I leaned back, crossing my arms over my chest. I thought it was time to finalize everything. She nodded slowly, glancing at her latte cup. Her nails tapped lightly on the cardboard. "I'm not seeing him anymore," she said, voice quiet. I shrugged. "I don't care." Her cheeks flushed. She looked down. "I know. I just thought you should know." A pause. Then she cleared her throat, tears threatening. "I'm sorry, Oliver. Every day I regret what I did." "Regret isn't the same as undoing it," I replied, letting the silence hang for a moment. My voice was calmer than I'd expected, but there was a bitter edge under it. She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. It's too late for that. Is that why you wanted to talk?" I asked. "To tell me you're done with him." She hesitated, partly. "And also to say goodbye, I guess, before the divorce is final. I just wanted you to know I really did love you. Maybe I still do, in a way." Something twisted in my chest. I recalled the moment we said, "I do" at the altar, the vow to stay faithful. I forced that memory away. "You have a strange way of showing it." She bowed her head, shoulders trembling. "I'm so sorry." A heavy silence filled the space between us. Eventually, I stood up. "I got nothing else to say. Take care." Without giving her a chance to respond, I turned and left. I heard her stifled sob, but I didn't pause. I stepped out into the cold night air, breathing hard, feeling both an immense weight and a strange sense of relief. Perhaps that final talk was the last nail in the coffin, or maybe it was my parting gift to myself. The next time I'd see her would be across a desk signing papers or hearing a judge's stamp. And that was enough. Weeks turned into months, and the legal process ground forward. A part of me remained angry, but it was increasingly overshadowed by exhaustion. I wanted it done. Every so often, I'd pass the old bar where I saw them that first night. I never went in again, just driving by, twisted, a knife in my gut. Work got busier. I was promoted to head of the sales department, ironically. That meant more hours, more responsibilities. It also meant more money, which I funneled into a new apartment in a quieter part of the city. The place was small but modern, a far cry from the suburban home we'd shared. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, which was the selling point for me. Sometimes I'd stand there late at night, staring down at the city lights, feeling like I was on the edge of a new life, one not weighed down by illusions of domestic bliss. During that period, I did my best to avoid anything that reminded me of us. I trashed old photos, left the wedding album in storage. I couldn't bring myself to flip through those pages, to see the smiles and read the loving messages our friends and relatives had written. It was too painful, and frankly, too pointless. The day the divorce was finalized, we stood in a sterile courthouse room, signing papers under the watchful eye of a clerk. She looked pale, eyes ringed with red. I kept my gaze on the documents, pen scraping across paper, signing my name here, initialing there. A wave of anger and sorrow washed through me, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the finality. This was it. The end. We parted without ceremony in the hallway. She lingered, maybe wanting a hug or some final words. I gave her a curt nod and walked away. I refused to give her that last piece of me. I refused to look back. In the weeks that followed, friends invited me to gatherings, tried to fix me up on dates. I politely declined, wanting no part of romance. My mother called frequently, her voice full of concern. I assured her I was fine, though she knew me better than that. She asked if I'd consider therapy. Maybe I should have, but I told her I just needed time. Instead of therapy, I kept up my new fitness regimen. I'd go for early morning runs, sometimes before sunrise. That crisp air in my lungs felt purifying, or maybe punishing. I don't know which. At night, I'd do push-ups until my arms shook, as if physical exhaustion could quell the turmoil in my head. It worked, to an extent. Work was my other crutch. I poured myself into deals, negotiations, leading my team. I found a strange satisfaction in the clarity of business transactions. There, everything was straightforward. Either you deliver results or you don't. If only marriages worked that way. If only loyalty could be measured and enforced with a clear set of consequences. Months slipped by. Then one day, I walked into a coffee shop before heading to the office, and there she was, my ex-wife, at a table with a laptop open, a scattering of papers around her. She looked up, spotted me, and froze. For a heartbeat, I considered turning around and leaving, but we locked eyes, and I decided to hold my ground. She closed her laptop, gave me a tentative half-smile. I approached her table, nodded politely. "Sarah," I said. "Oliver." Her voice was soft. She hesitated. "How have you been?" I shrugged. "I'm fine." It wasn't entirely true, but it was easier than explaining the maelstrom inside. I glanced at her setup. "Working on a project." She nodded, tapping the laptop. "Just freelance design for a small boutique." "It's keeping me busy." I noticed the wedding ring was gone from her finger. I felt a pang, quickly suppressed it. "Good," I managed. "I'm glad." She lowered her gaze. "You look different. More fit. Healthier. Been working out." I sounded dismissive, but I couldn't help the flicker of pride in my chest. That new hardness in me was part of who I was now. We stood in awkward silence. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I gave her a small nod. "I know." I meant it. I did know she regretted it. But that didn't erase the past. Didn't change that final, devastating scene in our house. "Take care, Sarah." She swallowed hard. "You too, Oliver." I stepped away, heading to the counter. I could feel her gaze lingering on me, and for a fleeting second, I let myself recall the warmth of her arms, the brightness of her laughter from years ago. Then I'd forced the memory away, placed my order, and walked out, not looking back. Part of me felt oddly liberated, as though the final shards of our broken connection had dissolved in that brief exchange. If there's one thing I came to understand, it's that betrayal leaves scars. They might fade, but they never fully disappear. Sometimes I catch myself re-examining those moments in the bar, in our home, playing the what-if game. But each time, I remind myself that her choices were hers alone. I might have been distant or inattentive, but ultimately, she made the decision to let another man in. And that choice forced me to reshape my entire life. Looking back, I realize I've been clinging to the idea of who we used to be, not who we really were by the end. Our romance was sweet, once. But time changes people, and maybe we grew apart in ways neither of us wanted to admit. She sought excitement elsewhere. I was too absorbed in my work to notice the growing chasm. Could we have saved it if I'd noticed sooner? Perhaps. But that question only leads to more pain. I'm older now, maybe not in years, but in spirit. The naive dreamer who believed marriage was an unbreakable bond is gone. In his place stands a man who learned the hard way that love isn't always enough to keep two people together. A man who knows that sometimes you have to gather the shattered pieces of yourself and forge them into something stronger and more unyielding. Sometimes pain is the crucible that shapes us. Every so often, someone at work invites me for a drink after hours. I decline more often than not, preferring to head home and enjoy the solitude of my new apartment. Maybe cook a simple meal, put on some music. I like the quiet now. It's a stark contrast to the raging turmoil of the months after I caught her in the act. I once thought that quiet was loneliness. Now I see it as a form of peace. I don't know what the future holds for me. Maybe eventually I'll meet someone who reminds me that love can be trustworthy. that not all hearts are prone to straying. For now, I'm content rebuilding myself. Healing is a slow, uneven process, but each day I feel a bit more stable, a bit more myself. And not the old self either, a version of me who's been through fire, hammered into a shape that doesn't bend so easily. Sometimes, in moments of reflection, I recall that final showdown in our bedroom, him standing there with the towel, water dripping off his muscles, wearing that shocked expression. I remember how I said nothing, just packed and left. I recall the trembling rage, the tears I wiped away at the doorstep. And I see that was the moment I decided to truly let go of the man I once was. She won, in a sense, she got her freedom. But in doing so, she pushed me to find a kind of freedom of my own. A release from illusions, from passivity. I walked out of that house stripped of everything I thought made me strong. But sometimes, losing everything is the catalyst for becoming something new, something unbreakable. I don't dwell on the past to punish myself, or to linger in bitterness. I revisit it to remind myself where I came from, how far I've traveled. Yes, there were nights that I woke up drenched in sweat, hearing her voice in my dreams. Yes, there were days I drowned in regret. But there were also mornings I rose before dawn, laced my running shoes, and chased the horizon, refusing to let despair be my final story. Step by painful step, breath by ragged breath, I outran the ghost of that naive husband who stood frozen in a bar, watching his wife kiss another man. Each time my feet pounded the pavement, I remembered the humiliation of standing there with a whiskey in my hand, forced to witness my wife's passion for someone else. The memory cut me deeply, but it also fueled me. Never again. I'd whisper under my breath while the blood roared in my ears and the sweat dripped down my forehead. Never again. In a way, I'm grateful for the illusions I lost. Without them, I see the world more clearly. I'm not jaded. I still believe in love, in decency, and the small everyday kindnesses people share. But I no longer believe in forever as an absolute guarantee. I've learned that relationships need constant vigilance, nurturing, honesty. And if those elements are absent, betrayal lurks, waiting to strike like a venomous snake. When I gaze at the city lights from my apartment window, I feel a cautious optimism stirring in my chest. I'm not the same man who once wholeheartedly trusted in fairy tale endings, but maybe I can still find happiness on my own terms. Maybe someday, someone out there will earn my trust in a way that's real, grounded, tested. Until then, I have myself, my work, and a quiet sense of self-respect that was battered but never fully destroyed. I think back to the final time I saw her tears, that night when she tried to stop me from leaving. I told her, "You won. You're free." She didn't protest, didn't chase after me. That memory used to gnaw at me, fill me with frustration. Why didn't she fight harder? But now, I understand. She knew, just as I did, that some wounds can't be undone. Some lines, once crossed, shatter too much to put back together. As I stand here now, it occurs to me that in letting her go, I also let go of my old self. The naive dreamer died that day, but from his ashes rose someone who carries the scars yet wears them like a badge of survival. The betrayal was a crucible, forging a sharper, steadier spirit. And for all the pain it caused, I can't deny that it gave me a chance to confront my own blind spots, my own weakness. It forced me to become a man who can stare heartbreak in the face and say, "I know you. I've survived you." So in that twisted sense, I thank her. Because I no longer flinch at the memory of his hands on her, or her lips parted in that bar. I no longer lose sleep envisioning them together in my own home. The rage, the devastation, the heartbreak, all real, all scalding, but no longer controlling me. My tears dried at that doorstep the night I left. And though tears might come again for other reasons, they won't be for her. Sometimes, I still see her indifferent gaze in my mind's eye. The way she looked right through me in that bar, the corner of her mouth curving like I wasn't even there. I used to hate that memory. Now, I accept it. It reminds me how easily illusions can crumble, how quickly love can turn cold if neglected or uncherished. But it also reminds me that I refuse to stay down, refuse to let her betrayal define my entire future. I close my eyes, exhaling softly. I can almost hear the faint hum of that bar, the neon lights buzzing, the bartender asking if I'm okay. I can feel the heat in my chest, the swirl of shock. But then, I open my eyes again, and I'm here, present, alive, unbroken. Maybe a little hardened, but not defeated. She won her freedom, yes. I gave it to her with that final, cold statement, but in doing so, I claimed my own. And from here on out, I walk my path alone, stronger for the scars, steadier for the trials. My story hasn't ended, it's only changed course, and that might be the real victory, the real triumph that betrayal cannot take away. I take one last breath, letting it settle in my lungs. Then, in my mind, I walk out of that bar once more, passing the table where she kissed him. But this time, I'm not frozen in shock. I'm calm, unflinching. My fist is not clenched. My posture is not slumped. I keep walking, stepping into the crisp night air, letting the door swing shut behind me. And I know, for better or worse, that's the day I said goodbye to the man I was, and welcomed the one I would become.